and welcome to the Blurry Turtle Podcast. Today's podcast is brought to you by electricity. Electricity, a pretty good invention. Our other sponsor is hats. Hats. Put them on your head. So basically I injured my wrist and can't do the write-ups this week. So I'm just going to run through this quickly on Flash Score. Give a little rundown of each match. Before we start, a little bit about myself. I'm sitting in a chair. So, all eyes on Sinner here, in the early rounds, but there's not really a big challenge in this part of the draw for him. The French Open match was probably the best of the year. For him, he's probably having thoughts about the early match points that he missed. A little out of character for him to go for the gusto on those. I felt like he tried to infuse a little pace and with a flourish, and once you miss that shot, instantly you've made a tactical error. Happy actually that he broke back in the fifth, because if that had just been a lopsided 5-set defeat, it probably would have hurt a bit more. So he's a consummate professional. He'll bounce back, he'll play well, and one of the things that helps you bounce back and play well is when you actually are good. Your skills don't deteriorate because of a big moment. Zverev, is a good example of a guy who, has fallen back because of tough defeats and big moments where he folded. And part of that is due to the technique not really being complete. Sinner doesn't have that problem. So I think he'll bounce back. As far as how long it'll bother him that he lost that match, that kind of moment tends to take until you defeat that player or until you win something of equal value to that title, really, before it stops coming up, which, that'll happen for Sinner. Nardi has the skill, not really the consistency on tour. He's not really as physically strong as Sinner. Compatriots playing each other can always be kind of tricky, but this should just be Sinner in 3 sets. I don't really see a huge challenge early in the draw for him. I do probably see him and Alcaraz playing again in the finals, and I'm okay with that. It could sound a little predictable, but it's always going to be a great match when they meet. And, here if they don't meet, it means something crazy happens in the next 2 weeks, which I'm okay with seeing also. So Sinner in 3, basically. Could go 4 if Nardi plays well, and Sinner starts slow. It's a funky thing where we all think these guys are going to be robotic, but in an early round, sometimes they want to hit a little more. Sometimes they want more match play. Nobody wants to go 4 or 5 sets, but it's not a huge concern, if you have a level you want to hit early and you lose a break trying to play, that aggressive game you're looking for. Sinner has kind of opened up in spots recently, trying to get things over quickly. The Tommy Paul match, the one against Casper Ruud in. It'd be easier to look it up. Hold on. When I'm typing, this is a lot easier. But I'm not typing, so you're stuck. You're stuck staring at my screen. Rome. Yeah. So Sinner has that mode now where he basically just goes for winners constantly, and he's good enough to do it. So against lower tier competition, there's always a chance that he just, dishes out that Swiatek level of 0-1 scoreline. Sang probably doesn't do too well on grass. He plays mostly behind his backhand. His backhand's really solid, but the serve and forehand are not really there. His best results are on clay. I'm not expecting him to beat Vauitch, even though Vauitch is not really at his best form right now. He started out the year really well, but there's kind of 2 Vauitches. Sometimes he's serving huge, and his forehand inside out is just completely flat and powerful. Sometimes he's hitting winners from everywhere, and sometimes his backhand almost looks good. And then sometimes, the guy just looks physically weak. He's hitting a lot of kick serves, and his backhand looks very, I don't know what the right term is, maybe fluttery. He gets a lot of air under it, but not really any power or spin. He still should win here. The conditions just suit him better. Sorry about the Bet365 ad at the bottom, by the way. I don't really condone gambling. I don't think bookmakers give everyone a fair deal. But I do like Flash Score because they have the head-to-head data, and the Wimbledon app is beautiful, but not really as fully built out as Flash Score. So send me money, Flash Score. The Lafhagen Martinez match is one. It's a pretty classic spot. It's the guy who, thrives in the conditions, but he doesn't really have the experience yet. Lafhagen, if you've seen him play, he's got a great serve, really good forehand. Doesn't really change direction or move well, even though he is fast. So it's the kind of match where it feels like he should win in straight sets against Martinez because Pedro hasn't really been playing well on grass. But again, there's multiple Martinez's also. I think you'll see this a lot on the tour. The guys just look like different human beings at different events. Martinez is capable of serving well. He's capable of hitting the ball really hard. And he has all the skill to extend rallies and make things tricky here. It's that veteran mode where you just kind of lock in and the pressure is all on the underdog. Lafhagen playing at home with the wild card. He's had some good results recently. He beat Billy Harris, who just played great last week. He beat Mackie McDonald, who's basically turning his year around on grass. These are good results. He should win. Martinez won a match at, I think it was Hurlingham. Boodles. But it's hard to really count those tournaments. I feel like everyone gets to win a set. Everyone gets to win a match. And, it's an exhibition more than anything. It's good to get the match in, but I think Lafhagen should win in 3 or 4 there. Chapo Navone is, a big letdown spot for Chapo, but almost every match is for him. Navone hasn't really done anything on grass so far this year. I don't really expect him to beat Chapo in a long format. Dennis's big problem is double faults. His swing is really beautiful on serve, but it starts to get really compacted when he gets nervous, and he hits a lot of spin and not a lot of pace in the big moments. So how many big moments is Navone going to create? I don't really think he serves big enough to keep Chapo from playing, and Chapo is still quite good, even if he can get a bit mental. I do think he could use, a coaching shift or something. He plays at one pace pretty much, and it looks like a lot of fun when it's working, but I think you play your opponent into form when you just hit every ball as hard as you can. It feels like it's not ideal either for a guy like Chapo, who has a lot of skill and moves really well. I don't think he needs to try to end every point on every shot. Dimitrov is back. The guy's been injured all year. He has a back problem. He also doesn't seem to pull out of events when he's injured. He just plays and loses anyway. I understand playing the majors. That's a big paycheck for everyone. I think most players on tour are going to play, unless they're in that Sinner Alcaraz, unless they're in that top tier where they're really more worried about their career than points and money. They're gonna play if they're half healthy. I hope Dimitrov's healthy. If he is, he beats Nishioka in 3 or 4 sets. Nishioka's a guy whose career is kind of fizzled. It's probably in the second half, and he had a lot of big knee injuries in the moments where he was about to break out on tour. So, a lot of residual trauma there, and you can see it come out sometimes when things are getting frustrating on tour. I remember one match in particular where he was losing to Korda in the first set tiebreaker, and he reacted like the match was over because of a call. And it's like, dude, you're like right there. You're right there. The match is not over, and you're playing Korda, who has, stamina and fitness issues. This should be a spot where you're fist pumping and digging in. But, when things have gone bad, you just expect them to go bad again. And if you can't recognize that as a doubt, as something that's not real, then it can affect your decision making. Komasana, it might be Komasanya, but they don't have an accent mark on Flash Score, so I'm not sure. Plays Moutet. Moutet looked really good this past week. He should be the favorite. Komasana has been one of those big match players, though. You know, he has all the skill. For like a clay quarter, sometimes he serves remarkably well. He's got really good slices, good drop shots, good hands at net. I think coming off a long week, that could be a tricky one for Moutet. Moutet should win, you know, in 4 sets. But again, you know, the guy is not that stable mentally when things are going rough, and Komasana is, you know. So I could see that one taking Moutet 4 or 5 sets to get through. Yeah, after a long week, too, it's hard to keep focus. I was actually surprised this week that Fritz played for so long. The Eastbourne title is great. You know, it's good to come in good form, but even though physically I think he'll be okay, it's hard to focus for that long when you haven't. You know, focus level is something, you know, you got monks in the mountains trying to maintain focus for hours and working for years of their lives to do that. And you got tennis players taking Adderall and other prescription drugs to maintain that on court. It just testifies to the fact that it's hard to lock in for that long. And I wonder how Fritz will do emotionally, you know, during the grind that he has for the first few weeks, because he does have a tough draw. So Moutet in 4 probably. Komasana could wake up. You know, he did beat Rublev last year, but, you know, he's not exactly the same player he was last year. And, you know, the ups and downs on tour are not things to overlook. Majettovic should beat Offner. Offner can serve really big, hits the ball really hard, but kind of having a rough go of it so far on grass, I think. Yeah, he dropped out of his last match. Got smoked by Rublev. You know, he beat Angle, but that's not huge. Hassan's a good win, but that's like the top level of the challengers or qualifiers. So, you know, beating Majettovic, who just went to 3 with O'Shea Aliassime, is not ideal. You know, Majettovic physically not really dominant, but should take care of this unless he has another, you know, injury issue, and hasn't looked like it so far. He just serves a bit better, and I think his slice game with his backhand gives him a big edge there because he doesn't have to exert as much energy in neutral rallies. You know, he's a very skillful guy who can infuse pace and moves pretty well, so grass is not the worst for him, you know, as long as he's not getting run around the court. Johannes Monday, big lefty server. Not a lot of trouble for Tommy Paul there. Tommy crashed out of a few matches early, but I don't think it's a cause for concern. You know, the long format. And him having such a good backhand makes him a good shout to beat most, you know, amateur. Well, I guess Monday's not an amateur, but most lower level lefties. Shelton Bolt, could see a couple tiebreakers here. Bolt serves really well. He's a lefty with a really flat forehand and a slice backhand, and that's about it. You know, he's pure offense, this guy. Really exciting player, but it's kind of like a deflated version of Shelton. You know, when Bolt is in control, he looks really good. And when he's on defense, it's more hopeful than effective. You know, Shelton's made a lot of progress this year. And even though he had a recent loss to Lerner Tien, I don't really count the losses the week before a major as a problem. You know, so Shelton should probably win that in 3 or 4. Bolt's offense is good enough to close out if he can get a break. He is pretty streaky. He can win 3 or 4 games in a row, but the consistency's not really there. And although he qualified, I don't really rate that as something that puts him in the category of Shelton just yet. Hijikata Goffin, I would probably skip. You know, if you couldn't see that, I can see it also, because it's just hard to say Goffin is healthy and Hijikata is not really the type of player who can dominate someone. You know, Goffin beat them the last time they beat him. Sorry, the last time they played. They played in Acapulco, 2-3. That's not so good. Adelaide. Hijikata returned the favor. Goffin just went to Boodles or Hurlingham and got a match in. He looked okay, but Hijikata's having a better grass season, might be healthier. It's really hard to say who's going to win that. The good Goffin is more offensively minded than Hijikata, and that's really the problem for Rinky. He has a great game, but it's great in his weight class. He's always earning points from the baseline. It's hard to win on grass like that, and Goffin has a lot of experience. I do think Hijikata's hitting style is good for grass. Yeah, it's close. If Goffin is healthy, I like him to win in 5. But it's another match where there's not really a lot of concrete data to go off. There's no formula to show why one of these guys would win. They've both had success against the other. They both had great wins and pretty bad losses. So, pretty close match is what I'd expect. Fucsovics gets lucky, gets the lucky loser spot. There's a thing on tour where the lucky losers come in and just play their best tennis. I think a lot of us will know from tournament play, sometimes we squander an easy match or we lose, and then we watch the next round and we really, really want to play. You're at a tournament for 3 or 4 more days because you booked your flights and hotels, and all you want to do is play and compete, and you're out. And if someone let you back in that tournament, you'd play so free, and that's what seems to happen with the lucky losers. So Fucsovics has an easy match here against Kovacevic, who's not really the best on grass, not really having the best season. I think Fucsovic's backhand is a little more effective on grass. He's playing really well right now. Should win in 3. Monfils and Ombber. Seems like the volume of French players just guarantees you're going to see a classic French matchup in the first round. Ombber should win this. Monfils has been pretty slow out of the gate on grass so far. It's a motivation thing for him at this point. If he wants to play, he can play, but, lost to McDonald. He was kind of priced to do so also. Sometimes I'll look at the bookmakers' prices to see if there's, any inside information there, and McDonald having a terrible season was, even odds with Monfils, who was coming off a great French Open. So, they knew that was going to happen. If Monfils locks in here, it's a big event. He can play well. But, I don't know. The grass really helps in Bear's game. It helps his wide serve. His backhand being so flat really slides on the grass. And, the only issue I've seen for him so far is that his forehand is not as laser-like as it has been in the past on grass. He's not playing as accurately. He's playing with more shape, more topspin. It does make him less dangerous. Maybe it makes him more consistent. I'd like to see him go a little bigger, honestly. But, the guy's not totally healthy. He had a back issue in... Where did he withdraw with the back issue? Against Fernley? That doesn't seem right. I think it was the match against Diallo, actually, where I saw it. And Bear really couldn't swing hard on his first serve. He was just slicing the ball in constantly. Still made the match close, but it's a warning sign. Played a couple matches since then, beat Billy Harris and Sono, and that's, you have to play a lot of defense to beat those guys, so should be fine here. I like Ombber in 3 or 4. Monfils is hard to shut out because he wants to entertain, so the moment he goes to give up, the crowd will get behind him, and when the crowd gets behind Monfils, he plays, so Ombber in probably 4. Nakushima Boo is pretty straightforward. Nakashima is, that weird fun fact about him having like serve bot statistics as far as hold percentages, but he's not really the tallest guy. He's 6'1", 6'2". I'm not gonna check because, to be honest, this is the first take of this that I got through the first couple matches without going what the F and just deleting it. Talking's hard. Not a fan of talking. Might be the last time I talk. Boo is not really the best on grass. His best attribute is being a fighter. He's very versatile. He grinds, but that's not really It's not really what grass is about. Nakushima's a good server. He's in the top percentile. I have a graph somewhere of like the top hold and return percentiles for grass. And, he's in the top for serving. Should get through that one in 3 or 4. Shevchenko, Pelka. It does feel like Shevchenko's playing much better this past like month or two. Tough draw though. Opelka in a 2 out of 3. Maybe he throws in a bad game. I do feel like he's a bit like Raonic, where he'll just throw in a love 40 game out of nowhere with a couple backhands in the net, shank a forehand into the stands. But 3 out of 5, he just has too much time to find his game, and he's playing well. He won a couple matches in his last outing, and by a couple, I mean one. He beat Lafhagen in 3. That's not really great, but it's not really bad either. Beat Shevchenko in 2, 7-6, 6-4 indoors, so pretty similar conditions here. I'd expect him to win in 3 or 4. Faria Sono is a tricky spot. I don't get credit for saying a match is going to be close, but the favorite's still going to win. It's really easy, I think, in these predictions to just say the favorites are going to win, and you'll get like 60% right. I think I come in around like 75 to 80% in most tournaments by the end. And that's not a great improvement on just blindly picking favorites. Faria has a big serve though. The guy's a clay quarter, but his serve and his forehand are legit. Had a really, really tough match in the final round of qualifying against Kyrian Jacquet. And, just when it started to look close, Faria just locked in and closed it out. I don't see a lot of quality defense getting played in this match. Sonego does serve bigger, bit more variety, likes to get to net more. But I think this is the kind of match where you'll see, 40, 41, 42 games. So Sonego in 4 or 5 there. I really do think Faria is going to be a tough out for him there. Sonego's not the guy to really lock down an opponent in their service games. Basilashvili's back, playing good ball. It's a step back for him to be in qualifiers at most of the majors, but, he's doing well in them. I don't think he can beat Musetti. In the past, he's had some success against Musetti on grass specifically. I'll show you that result, but that's 2022. And Musetti's made a lot of progress since then in his offense. Basilashvili, good run in qualifying. Lost to Jair, though. Lost to Duckworth. Musetti retired at the French, but if he's healthy, he should win here. And I think with Musetti's career going as well as it is, if he wasn't healthy, he might completely skip this. So I expect him to win this match in, 4 or 5 sets. Basil's offense is great, but, you keep putting the extra ball back and he gets frustrated. Basil's the kind of guy, too, who once he gets frustrated, he stays in that error mode. He'll just beat the net up with backhands because he's frustrated. And, it's that Arthur Fees technique where you try to hit yourself out of a bad form. And it works if you're in great shape. And, it doesn't work if you're not. I guess I'm saying he's not in great shape. I don't know. But it's the second half of his career, and I don't really think he's going to blast Musetti off the court. I almost think he'd have a better chance on hard court. Musetti serves pretty well. I could be setting myself up to get blown away here because Basil's in good form, but yeah, I think Musetti will give him the chances to hit the ball. I just don't think he's going to give him enough free points. And serving wise, I think they're pretty even. Basil will have higher highs, but his dips also are more common. Draper Baez is kind of a tricky one. Baez is actually one of the guys who, for a clay quarter, he's up pretty high in break percentage on grass. Somewhere in the 30s, I want to say. Actually, probably probably should have this data in front of me when I do this, is what I'm realizing now. But, we're 25 minutes in, so you've probably fallen asleep by now. And if you haven't, thanks. Yeah, Draper, I have Draper going probably to the semis in this draw. It's going to be difficult, obviously, but I do think he's a little better in the competition through most of his bracket. Bublick in I think it's the third round. That's going to be tough. I don't know. Playing at home, the home crowd. Bublick just went on a tremendous run. It goes back to that attention thing. How long until you're satisfied? You're hungry for titles, and these are great opportunities, and you're having great success. And then when that moment comes where you finally start to lose or see yourself getting beat, it's almost like you see the opportunity to be a gracious loser when it should be the moment where you dig in. And it's not a mental weakness thing. It's just a level of perspective, that can spoil your game a little bit. You feel like, oh, well, I've had a good run. I won the last tournament, so this is, it's not so bad. You make peace with it almost before it happens. Yeah, so Draper in 3 or 4. Baez, I'm telling you, he's very tricky on grass, and his lack of power and, the ability to serve is a problem on hard court. But grass boosts everybody in that department. And he does it pretty flat on his backhand, which can be tricky. Cilic is playing really well again. Collignon, definitely mispronouncing that. I'll call him Raphael. Way better on clay. He is tall. He does hit hard. And Cilic has just wild results this year. He's grinding challengers and crushing people, and then crashing out against guys you'd never expect him to lose to. But, he's a better player on grass here. Serves better. His game is all about offense right now, and the other guy is a clay grinder. So, Mabe and Marosan, kind of an upset spot here. Mabe serving really well. Just had some good results. Qualified, beat Barrios Vera, that was a big serving battle. Barrios is pretty much a serve bot on clay, which is always interesting to see. Very skillful player, but, for Mabe to get past him means he was holding serve well. Buruchaga's not really a threat. Gojo, good server, but not really at his best. He beat Lafhagen. Not bad results. The reason I say it's an upset spot is because Marosan has been losing, and he does have a tendency to play to the level of his opponent sometimes. He's, he has a great offense, but I don't know. He's one of those guys like Popperin who just kind of goes for the shot instead of assessing the situation at times. On clay, he has time, so I don't know. A good way to put it, I guess, is Marosan has perfect swings when he has the chance to hit them. It's kind of like Dimitrov. If you throw these guys a little bit off, they tend to go for the shot anyway. Maybe Dimitrov's a bad example because he can get real passive, but Marosan can miss. He can get rushed also, and grass is a tough spot for that. So this is another Faria Sonego spot where I think this will be a lot closer than the rankings. Marosan in 5 sounds nice, but I don't know. I almost think Mabe can win just because he's better in these conditions. Munar Bublick is a pretty solid match. I'm actually, I'm hesitant to just push Bublick through there, but just won the title in Halle. Just beat a bunch of, a bunch of great players. I mean, look at this list. Medvedev, Kachanov, Machak, Sinner, Muller. Oh, that one's sad. But, yeah, Munar is making a year out of just being very frustrating to play. And for a guy who was basically a pusher on clay in his early years, it's really nice to see him develop that offense. He's got, he's got a little bitch attitude, I'm going to try not to curse in these. I'm going to keep it real classy, like our sponsor, electricity. a pretty good invention. But yeah, I Bublick is playing great tennis right now. He should win this. He's a little better on serve. He's enjoying playing. I guarantee the Wimbledon crowd is behind him here because he's wildly entertaining. This is the danger of playing that guy who's a shot maker, is that in an empty stadium, yeah, maybe you can grind it out, but when the fans are behind him, it just makes him more creative. It makes him more dangerous, and it gives him that adrenaline boost too. When you are playing a match and the crowd starts to shift, you feel it, and in these stadiums, it's even worse. So, like Bublick there in 3 or 4 sets, it's the kind of match where I wouldn't really want to guarantee a scoreline because Munar can be so frustrating, and he's willing to put in the work that can succeed against Bublick. Bublick is going to give you chances. He's going to go for silly drop shots. He's going to hit some underarms. So Munar, whose whole thing is efficiency, is going to thrive in those moments. How many moments there are, that's going to determine whether it's 4 sets, 5 sets, 3 sets. Zukayv, probably botching that. Playing Cavalli is not easy, but it's another match where I think you're going to see 4 or 5 sets. Zukayv was really effective in qualifying. He's a great server. He's very skillful, good break percentage, and Cavalli just lost to Fernley. Zverev isn't a bad loss. Beat Shapo, that's fine. I just think Zukayv is at the qualifier level, but the conditions are better for him. I don't think that's a straightforward match at all. Cavalli's actually a guy like Arnaldi who just seems physically different at times. When he's losing, it feels like he has the wrong racket size, hitting the ball out a lot, can't find his backhand, and when he's winning, his spot serving is incredible. I don't really know what shifts for these guys for them to just be able to land their serves perfectly. There's a lot of health issues, a lot of training stuff, different conditions are just going to suit different players. It can be confidence too. You finally see the ball go through the hoop and you start to shoot better. But right now, Cavalli is playing fairly well. So the upset is entirely possible there if he doesn't serve well. If he serves well, if Cavalli can land, 65% of his first serves, he should win that in 4 or 5. Really dangerous though. That other guy, if you get a chance to watch his game is funky. It's interesting, and I think the only reason he hasn't made it on tour yet is because of the qualifier, not the qualifier, the challenger depth right now. There are just a lot of great players at the challenger level. It looks similar to the level at a 250 really in the early rounds. Etcheverry, Pennington, Jones. This is a good wildcard spot for Pennington. He's been playing well, good server, good power. Honestly, all the British men wildcards are well deserved, and they did well in qualifying too. Just really, it's nice to see. It's nice to see a home country thrive on that surface. The same can be said for the WTA side. The British girls are really playing well on grass, and it makes sense. You don't have to defend home turf, but it's good to see. Etcheverry is susceptible to losses on grass. He's mostly a clay grinder, but he does have some decent wins. He went to play Hurlingham. Again, these results, everybody gets a set. Guys are just there to hit the ball around. I think only Rublev crushed anybody at Hurlingham or Boodles last week. He beat somebody 2-3, which I thought was kind of funny. Go out there to get some exhibition matches and just get absolutely trucked. Yeah, losing to Borges in 3 is not so bad. Losing to Nava in 3 is not so bad. Losing to Skulkate in 3 is not so bad. But it's a lot of losses. So, even though Etcheverry is not at his best, he's competing at a higher tier. That's a tricky thing sometimes. The player is not at their best, but, the mistakes that a player like RBA is earning against Etcheverry, the mistakes that a guy like Kachanov is earning, Pennington's best game basically gets those mistakes. So he's going to have to maintain a peak level and do it in a 3 out of 5 format, and I don't know. I don't think so. Etcheverry probably wins that in 4 or 5. I think he has to outlast him. Pennington is really good, continuing to get better. Just not quite there yet. So Etcheverry in 5. Garon actually played well against Fritz last week. It was a little tricky to give him full credit because Fritz was playing his second match in the same day. But Ugo Carabelli is just not really dangerous on grass. Garon should win that in 3. Same thing here with Gaston and Mensik. Gaston's going to put on a good show. I actually think Mensik looked a little bit uncomfortable on grass. I think he fought through it well. I don't think he's totally comfortable, so I don't think this is going to be the best tournament for him. Giron and him will probably be tricky. But Gaston doesn't really have the offense, hasn't really had the season to really pull the crazy upset. And even if Mensik is not really as offensively minded right now on grass, his serving is still good enough to get through that in 3. Damonor, Carballes, Baena, very similar plans. As far as the tennis, Damonor hits the ball very flat, very fast, tries to grind people down. Carballes Baena does it behind his backhand, just tries to play error-free tennis, keep you moving. Should be fun to watch. I haven't seen Damonor play a lot recently. Boodles, I guess he's healthy enough to play. The Lehechka loss is not really actually that bad, so yeah, I guess he has been active. RCB retired his last match. Never won a match against Damonor, so Alex should win that. Alex has a pretty good draw, from what I checked. Cazot Walton is one I actually thought Walton could win until I looked at the matches between them. Cazot has won every time, and what happened early in his appearance on tour was that he beat a bunch of top guys that he wasn't expected to, and it was because not because directly, the guy's a great player, but he had also beaten them in the juniors. So he's had a good track record of solving other players. Cazot has a really interesting backhand technique. It's compact, it's strong, he goes down the line well. Great serve when he's healthy. Fitness has been the issue, but coming through qualifying indicates he's pretty healthy, so should win this in 4 or 5. I don't like writing Walton off. He serves well, moves well. There's nothing wrong with his game here. This is 2 good serve, good forehand players going up against each other on a fast surface, so it could be a shootout. Cazot should be just a little better. It's hard to say. It's hard to guarantee someone's going to win a long match when their main issue has been fitness. But Cazot in 4 is probably what happens there. He did get through qualifying without issue. So we'll see. Halis and Holmgren is one of the matches in the draw that made me go check footage. I hadn't seen a lot of Holmgren. He's a tall guy from Denmark, as a one-handed backhand. Mostly hits topspin, which is surprising. On grass you'd think they'd want to hit a lot of slices, but mostly topspin. Good serve. Halis might not be totally healthy here, so it's tricky. But I actually think Holmgren's main issue is movement on defense. Those quick couple first steps to return serve and to run down shots. I feel like he doesn't really come up with a shot that gets him out of trouble a lot of times in those situations. And I think Halis will be the better returner. Similar prowess on offense. With control, they're gonna dominate the other guy. They're gonna score easily. But I think Halis is going to put more balls in tough situations and win, 3 or 4 sets. It's tough to count Holmgren out right now because he did just win his last 3 matches as an underdog. So, there's no reason, there's no ceiling, established for him right now. When a player is pulling upsets, that makes their ceiling undefined, right? Because we didn't expect it. I say we, it's me. I didn't expect it. Yeah, but I think Halis will win that in 4 or 5. Zoomer, Machak, probably mispronouncing, might be Machak, but yeah, Zoomer's not that great on grass. He'll win a set somehow because he's a fighter. He's an efficient player. He's a ton of experience. He really was a guy who was on tour already and had a full career, and then crashed off and made it back grinding challengers, which feels almost impossible to do on the men's side. But Machak is relatively healthy here. Should win. He has a great serve. He has tiny shorts. He has giant legs. And I love him. No. But yeah, he could use with some bigger shorts. Might help his movement, but you can't get sidetracked talking about somebody's shorts. Or you can. I don't know. Machak in 4, probably. He's just really aggressive. So grass is a situation where I think he should do well. It's not really something he has a ton of experience in, but his game seems like it'd be efficient there. He hits the ball pretty flat. It's very aggressive, and he moves well. That's grass. It's about athleticism and it's about offense. So Mickelson, Kecmanovic, pretty big letdown spot here for Mickelson. He played well last week. Pretty tough loss to Moutet. I thought Mickelson played really well against RBA. RBA was basically challenging him to win the match with winners, and Mickelson had enough patience to do that. He served really well. And, he's solid. 41 minutes already. It's a lot of yapping. Yeah, after a long week, I think it's tricky for Mickelson to come back here and grind Kecmanovic. Kecmanovic is not really having, I'll show you the recent results on grass. He's not really having the best time, right? He lost to Evans, lost to Marosan, who I think is going to lose to a qualifier. Not really the best results, but I do see him towards the top of the graph that I mentioned that I'll never show you ever about hold and return percentage on grass. He's solid at that. He's a good player in the long format. They haven't met. I don't know. I just think Mickelson should win this match, but okay, I'll put it this way. After Mickelson beat RBA, I was looking to go back him possibly in the next match. When I saw he was playing Moutet, I was disappointed because Moutet's the kind of player who can extend rallies. He can drag you into a bunch of, ridiculous grinds. And that's something Mickelson has trouble with. He has trouble staying steady in neutral rallies. It's that tendency to go for the big shot. And it's that, it's a tough decision for him. When he gets an opportunity on a return, should he rip it and try to hit the clean winner? Or should he take his chances putting the ball in play where he might get outmaneuvered because he's not really the fastest player at this point? And I think that's going to be a constant choice against Kecmanovic, who tends to serve a bit better in big tournaments. Just feels like a tough spot here. And I don't know, no real reason to expect Mickelson to fumble here. But, the letdown after a long week is tough. And Kecmanovic in 5 is the disappointing result that I expect. Not disappointing for anyone in tennis, but I don't know. It feels a bit negative to doubt someone who just turned in a good week. Jesper de Jong, top 10 cool names in tennis. Playing Chris Eubanks, top 10 cool guys in tennis. Eubanks has been kind of stuck off tour, not really doing much. Played some exhibitions, won them all. Playing Tiafoe doesn't really count. Tiafoe's effort level is directly related to the level of tournament he's playing at. Eubanks having won both their previous matches is pretty good for him. Hardcourt matches, a lot of tiebreakers in their history. I don't think either player is coming in at their best here, but the conditions are a little better for Eubanks being a server, not really wanting to play long rallies. He does have a slice backhand, because he has a one-hander. It's a little safer for him on grass than it is on any other surface. So he's not, completely screwed when he gets in a baseline rally. I think the issue here with just giving the match to Eubanks is that neither player is really going to be able to play defense on the other one's serve. De Jong has a good serve. Not great, but it's good enough. He has a good forehand. He moves well, spreads his backhand nicely down the line a lot of the times. He can get a little bit bunched up sometimes on the baseline because he tries to run around his backhand, but I don't know. Eubanks seems like the type of player who he's hitting you off the court or he's missing. So should be some good tennis there. 4 or 5 sets. I think Eubanks wins. Playing a server in a 5th set is really difficult when they're tall. If the power is coming from their legs and it's a jump thing, like a Federer, then I think you can sometimes wear them down. But when the guy is tall, the serve tends to stay effective at the end of the match because he's just tossing it up and swinging. And, you'll be a bit tired physically from chasing serves and mentally from guessing. So Eubanks in probably 5. Evans somehow finds his best tennis every year for a month or two. It's good to see. Playing well on grass, a lot of wins. Jay Clark is a good player. Not really the most aggressive, which I think is why he's still at the challenger level. He's, a great athlete, good player, has some good results. It's just hard at the challenger level to win and get out of there when you do sort of grind away. He has the ability to play a bigger game. It's just risky to do it, when you have to grind for points. You have to maintain your ranking and hope for the best. Good draw for him because, Evans is not unbeatable, but right now he's playing a bit better. Jookovic playing Muller again. Last time they played, Jookovic went to press and said he's attractive, but that's not enough, which is, if you need to generate a way to have a grudge against a guy, that's cool. I don't think Muller said anything about being attractive, but, I like Jookovic. Before you slide in my inbox and get upset, I know you will anyway. I know you can hear me. Nah, I do like Jookovic. I do like his ability to manufacture a reason to play hard. I think, I call it the green light. Like sometimes you're on the court, the other guy will say something or do something that just gives you the green light, even though you should have had it already, gives you the green light to just go all out and play and just want to beat that guy and take him out of your mind as a person and just make them an obstacle, just for the match. Obviously you're not cheating, you're not doing anything sketchy, but Djokovic is a master at finding motivation. And that's important in tennis because it's a grind. It's exhausting being out there. I can do analysis. I can talk about how they shouldn't go for this shot or they should play more aggressive or their court position, but you're out there for hours. It's tough. Djokovic, one of the favorites for this tournament. Definitely an unknown as far as his ability to beat Sinner and Alcaraz here. I think he can still do it. He seems healthy. Some of the matches in recent years, he wasn't 100% at Wimbledon. So definitely a guy you don't want to play. Definitely a guy who's going to go deep in the draw. I don't think Muller will pose much of a problem here. Djokovic probably wins in 3. Sometimes he drops the first set of a major, but, no guarantee that trend will continue. Fritz and Perricard is a good match. Scary because Perricard serves so well, but, Fritz just won the title in Eastbourne. He looked great. Again, I don't really know. Know the total motivation for guys the week before a major. I think it's great to come in after winning a title. I do think it's tough to focus for that long. Fritz has gotten a lot better. He's fixed the aspects of his game that were holding him back, which were really about effort and focus. Great to see him winning the title. He played really well. He was able to generate incredible pace with his forehand. He's hitting a heavy topspin forehand, but, he's getting it to slide the court really well. You know, it really feels like he's using the court better than his opponents and looks motivated. Again, one of the easiest service motions I've seen in tennis. The guy can just throw the ball up and bounce it over your head or past you pretty easily, and it's very repeatable. He's not, he's not out there double faulting. He's moving well. More importantly, he's hustling. You can see full exertion when he's on defense. He's willing to do whatever it takes to get the ball back, and that's big. You could call him a dark horse for this tournament because he's in Zverev's section and he has a good record against him. Perricard's a scary matchup, but he hasn't really been playing well this season. And, if two servers play each other, I do like the guy with the better baseline game, and that's definitely Fritz right now. So, Fritz might get a little mentally burnt later in the week, I think. But, second round against Diallo is going to be tough. But first round here, I think he'll be okay. I think he'll win in 3 or 4. Maybe he drops a tiebreak. But, he's playing much better. And Perricard does need a little bit of time for his ground strokes. So grass is not really going to help him besides the serving. Diallo should run through Altmaier. Altmaier plays to the level of his opponent, gives him a chance here, but I don't really like his ground strokes on grass. He's very skillful. He'll alter his game. He'll hit slices on his backhand. He'll serve well because he's a great match player, but I think he needs more time to set up on his backhand. And I think the same is true for his forehand. I think Diallo will be able to rush him. Diallo has proven that he can come back in matches, but he's also thrown away some sets trying to play very aggressive. So I think Diallo probably wins in 4. Arnaldi van de Zandschulp. I might be pronouncing that right. Vauitch is a great player. Grass better for him than Arnaldi. He's done okay at Wimbledon. I think he made the round of 16 once. I don't think he'll win here. I just feel like you can see Arnaldi's been losing. Lost to Struff, which is one of the only wins Struff has. Lost to Cabali. That was actually the French Open. But you look at Vauitch and he's just, not really winning matches on tour. When you watch him play, the body language looks bad. He looks negative. He looks like he's not really sure. The game is there, but, tennis is tough. Pretty close match here. 2023 is a long time ago, Is it? Wait, what year is it? 2025. Or maybe it's not that long ago. This should be close. I think Arnaldi is a little more consistent. I think he has a better attitude. I think Vauitch will need to bring his best tennis for 3-4 hours here, and I think there will be lapses that will give Arnaldi hope. I don't know. That's what I think. It's sad, though. Vauitch is one of the most entertaining players on tour when he's playing well, so you want him to play well. But he also is shanking forehands this season, and, when your forehand timing is gone with the kind of swing production that he has, you miss the court. You don't miss the target, So Arnaldi in 4. Davidovich, Volkina, Holt. That's a pretty good one. Holt's been playing well. He does do really well on courts where flat hitting is, a key. I don't think he's really been winning matches. That early U.S. Open run was beautiful. He's right there near the tour level. Volkina looks a little too comfortable, though. He had a good 3-setter with Fritz. On grass, he's not really that dangerous on serve, but he's moving the ball well. I think this year he's less aggressive and looking more to guide the ball into difficult spots, and it's making him more dangerous because, now he doesn't have to rely on defense after taking a big swing is tricky. Defense after taking a measured swing, you're moving smooth to the ball, and he still can infuse pace on his forehand or backhand when he needs to, which, it makes it tricky. It's kind of what Jookovic does. Jookovic is, his best thing, I think, is his timing. And then when he needs to and he turns it up a little bit, it's hard to adjust to that extra pace. So I think Volkina wins that in 4. Popper and Ferry is going to be tricky. A lot of people probably haven't heard of Arthur Ferry, but, they had a close one last year in qualifiers. That's Popyrin winning in 3, but the 7-5 tiebreaker means, the match could have gone in either direction. The stats are where I really thought there's something big here. 8 double faults is gross, but better serve percentage for Ferry. Same amount of break points. 2 break points means they were having trouble breaking each other. This is where I really thought it was good. The 32 winners to 14 unforced errors is great. If you turn in that performance on grass, you're doing well. A lot of people are winning matches at 20-20. If you're 3 times as many winners to unforced errors, it makes sense on grass, right? You can hit a lot of winners more easily, but you're also going to make a lot of errors. So, I do think this match will be tricky. Popyrin is another guy who has all the tools, but forehands into the bottom of the net, timing issues. He talks about him and his team working really hard about their physical ability. It's affecting his results positively, but I don't know. He reminds me a little of Pospisil, where when something is a little bit off about the ball or the conditions or something, it's not that he complains about it, but a little bit off means an error from him. When his backhand's a little bit off, he clips the tape. When his forehand's a little bit off, he sends the ball wide. It's a very sharp and accurate game he has, and he's aiming high. He's putting in the physical work to get there, but he's just not completely there yet on the fast surfaces. I think clay is probably still one of his best situations. So that should be close. The home crowd will be on Ferry's side. I don't think Popyrin's mad at that. I don't think he'll struggle because people cheer against him. He's pretty resilient. He's very confident. Should win that in 5. But I just think Ferry's a guy most people are going to overlook in the draw because he's not well known. And, he's already had good success against Popyrin. Darderi Safiulin's another one I'd probably skip. Darderi's not winning matches, but he's winning sets. He's grinding away. He did okay in the exhibitions. 3 with Cilic is not bad. A set off Berrettini is not the worst. I shouldn't really count these results when I say that everybody gets a set, but I am. Safiulin's a great server. Not really the best mover. I feel it's hard for me to back him because every time I see him playing a baseline rally, I feel like he's just getting to the ball at the last second and hitting it back. And then the next ball, he's just getting there at the last second. And, Darderi can grind. It should be tricky. I think Safiulin's serve puts him atop this match, but could be a close one. Kopriva definitely has a tough time with Thompson. Thompson hits the ball very flat on his backhand, moves well, plays kind of a cat and mouse game on grass. He serves well enough to get through, but he's mostly looking for you to make an error. He's giving you tough shots, little slices in the front court, and he just looks like he knows he's athletically better than you, and he's challenging you to hit something past him. It works, it's been working so far. He should win that in 3. Kopriva's really a clay grinder at this point, and he does serve well, but I don't think he'll serve his way through that. Bonzi hasn't been that great lately. Medvedev's been playing well. He just won a bunch of matches somewhere. Oh, Halle. Oh, he was in the finals. Great. Good for him. It's honestly nice to see him winning again. He did that little jump after winning a match somewhere where he looked like a great big kid. And I don't know, good Medvedev is very good for the tour. Grumpy giving up Medvedev isn't really not good for anyone. Yeah, so he should win that. Bonzi's just not really at his best on grass. Medvedev in 3. Cerundolo's in a weird spot. He did just go to an exo somewhere. The way he hits the ball so flat and his movement and his ability to serve, even though he's considered like a clay courter, really should help him here. I just think he's a slightly more dangerous version of Borges at this point. I think it's Borges, actually. Nuno Borges? Borges? Nuno Borges. Yeah, he's playing well, but he's not really dangerous. I kind of view him as like a defensive version of Pete Sampras. He kind of has the same funky pop when he walks. He's got a good serve. He's got creative shots. He does hit the ball flat, which is good on clay. I just think at this point, Borges' game is not really that big. I feel like he ends up in a ton of grinds, and this is the right guy to grind against and the wrong guy. It's the right guy because Cerundolo can show up and spray a bunch of errors and lose tons of matches like he did in the beginning of the year. It's the wrong guy because, he hits the ball bigger than Borges and he serves better. So it's just giving him extra chances to get little boosts in his game. So I think Cerundolo, if he's healthy, he hasn't been playing. If he's healthy, he should win in 4 or 5. Haris Lajovic, pretty good result for Lajovic in qualifying. Nice to see him get the lucky loser spot. Billy Harris played great in, I don't know if it was Eastbourne or Mallorca. His game is serve and forehand, basically. He hits the ball real hard, serves well, moves okay for a big guy. Basically the kind of game I would never expect to beat Norrie. I would always think Norrie would expose his movement, and he beat him in straights, right? Then he beats Bellucci. Not really the most impressive one on grass, but played well against Ombber also. So I think even though Lajovic won a few matches, I think Harris will just be able to score way easier in that, and Harris will probably win in 3 or 4. Mochizuki against Zippieri. Very tricky matchup there. Mochizuki is playing well on grass. Pretty entertaining player. Tons of net rushes, really solid backhand. He's a shorter guy, so you're not really going to see a lot of serves go unreturned here. That gives Zippieri a chance. Zippieri is mostly a clay court specialist, but he's lefty, big serve, very fast forehand. This is going to be a grind. I'm not really sure why Mochizuki is favored. I guess having such a good backhand gives you a boost against a lefty, but I think they're both going to have a tough time breaking the other guy. Zippieri tends to go for winners on returns. It's going to be tough on grass. But, he has a cannon for a left arm, and I don't really see Mochizuki blowing anybody off the court. So I guess Mochizuki in 5, but I'm really just going off, their recent results with that. Zippieri did beat Garin in qualifying, which is tremendously difficult. Garin is really good on grass. If he gets in as a lucky loser spot, I don't think anybody's looking to play him. McDonald Kachanov, good match. It's hard to beat McDonald on grass. He moves well. His forehand's pretty flat, makes the ball slide. Kachanov at majors has just been a gatekeeper, though. And even though he's having a rough start to the year, lately he's been winning a lot of matches, and he's hungry for it too. It's good to see guys that have been struggling kind of getting it together and looking hungry at the same time. I like Kachanov serving better. Not really as good of a mover, but is way stronger on the backhand. So I feel like McDonald is going to look effective here when he has control, but in neutral rallies, I don't see where he's going to score, and I think eventually he's going to make errors. Could be sneakily close, but Kachanov in 4 is if they play the match 100 times, I think that's the most likely outcome. Berrettini's back. Good to see. He's been not really healthy this season. Majrzak is not bad. Not really a big enough game for me to think he blows Berrettini off the court. So, barring injury, Berrettini should win that 3 or 4. Harry Searle. Oh, I'm definitely pronouncing that wrong. I've actually never heard his name pronounced because he hasn't really been on tour yet. I'm sorry, Harry. I'm sorry. Yeah, but Quinn is playing really well. Got inside the top 100, winning matches. You know, I don't care if it's against Crawford and Kopriva. Winning matches is winning matches. You know, Quinn's forehand is really sharp and gives him a chance. Sirle is I should just call him Harry because I'm definitely crunching his last name. He's a good server. Well-deserved wild card. You know, I just haven't seen a win of this caliber for him. And I think Quinn's ability to serve big and hit big forehands is a bonus. And I think he's played a lot of big moments in matches this year where he hasn't shied away. I've seen him in big tiebreakers, and he's been willing to go for shots. He's been the more aggressive player, and he hasn't really missed. It's not, it's not just that he's willing to go for broke. It's that he's converted in those spots, So I think he has a good base, and he'll win that in 3 or 4. Chris Rodesh, one of the best stories of the Challenger Tour this year. He's just been constantly winning. Hasn't really been favored in a lot of those matches. He's big serve, big forehand. Reminds me of Alexander Block a little bit. Not really the best mover. So, PCB has a chance if he's able to return serve. But Pablo's been struggling this year. He hasn't really served well since his return. He had elbow surgery. I think it's a win for him as far as getting things together. But I don't think there's a rush from his team. They waited a while to get him back on the court. I think they're just fine weathering the early losses. Grass's situation doesn't really help him. He's lost a lot at Wimbledon. Rodesh should win in 3. He just should. He's playing really well. Rinderknecht Zverev. It's funny, after the French Open, I thought Rinderknecht's result against Sinner looked a little better than it did initially. He scored a handful of games on him, and it's tricky. He's been good since then. He's been playing good on grass. Zverev starts slow. I don't think Zverev should lose this match ever, but I think it could go 4 sets pretty easily. Zverev tends to drag his way through the early rounds. It's not really that aggressive, and Rinderknecht takes his chances and hits the ball a little harder than it looks. He's a guy who looks kind of like a strong, manly French deer. Just majestic in the forest. But no, I won't say anything negative. Yeah, and no, he hits the ball hard. His backhand's a little steadier than it has been in the past. So Zverev in 3 or 4 makes sense. But it should be a good match. Like, if I'm buying tickets, that's a fun one. Another fun one, Rune Jarry. Rune is pretty masterful at winding up in stupid 5th sets early in a match. I don't think this one is that stupid. Jarry won in qualifying. One of the strangest service motions you'll see, and he pretty much just tosses it in the air and hits it with no backswing. But he's tall, so it works. And he's been struggling with vertigo for a couple of seasons now. It's really been rough watching such a good player lose, especially since the style of tennis he plays is really entertaining. A lot of strong drives, a lot of aggressive play. Rune playing fairly well, not really efficient on grass, I'd say, but serves pretty well. This is a David Goliath situation, but reputation wise, I guess Rune is Goliath. I don't think he'll get through quickly. I don't think he's totally locked in mentally on the court. I don't think he really handles adversity by himself yet. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see players not complain to their box. When things go wrong, I'd like to see them just recognize whatever has happened, whatever tactical mistakes they're making, or just recognizing the opponent playing well and just nodding and moving on. Nadal had a little routine he liked to go through, but you don't really need that totally to reset. If you just get in the habit of nodding and moving on, it becomes routine, and you start to believe it. In the beginning, the coach tells you to fist pump and it's kind of BS. After a while, you start to really believe it when you fist pump, and then, of course, you Pac-Man off the other side of the screen and believe it too much, and you wind up fist pumping after every point like Kevin Anderson. So yeah, Rune 4 or 5 there. I don't think he should lose. Jarry really doesn't move well enough, but it's the kind of match that Rune needs to really focus early, or he could wind up in a bad situation because Jarry has big power, and he's going to take care of his serve. Lerner Tien has beaten Basil already most of the time that they've played, or all of the time, really. They came up at the same time. I like Nishesh's game if he packs on some muscle. Starting to have good results on grass, but, Lerner Tien was doing the opposite. He was actually constantly losing on grass, and he found out basically how to play this past week. He's serving well. He's hitting solid. He's a slightly better mover, maybe a little stronger athlete than Basil already at this point. So, should be a good shootout. I like Tien's side. Friendly Fonseca, probably the best match of the first round. Fonseca has been, the big hype. Man, it hasn't really come to fruition yet. I wonder if I say a lot. Well, who cares? Fernley's a little better on grass so far, I think. And even though Fonseca is the bigger name, more hype, I think this will be a tough one. Fonseca is still in that mode of just going for whatever he wants. And I don't think that totally works for him yet. I don't think physically he's strong enough for it yet, and I don't think the tour is bad enough for it. You can't just roast everything. Learning that balance is what's going to come for him as he goes. He doesn't really have to lay off, unless he wants the smaller results. He had a good result against Fritz last week, but he's had some losses where he just basically crashed out. And all of Fonseca's early losses on tour have just been guys who could grind and were a little physically stronger. And that's where Fernley is right now. Fernley hits pretty hard, sends the ball down the line well off both wings. He moves well. He's playing at home. Not really dissimilar results on tour, but I feel like Fernley, having pulled all these results as an underdog, whereas Fonseca had the hype and pulled some of them, I think it benefits. I think Fernley's a little more hardened. I think he's a little more focused. Should be a close one. I think Fernley wins in 5. It's going to take a lot of defense. It's going to be a lot of highlight moments from Fonseca. Fritz actually put a comment online complaining that he probably wouldn't get, he put it before he watched the video. He said he probably wouldn't have most of the highlights in the video against Fonseca. And, well, yeah. I mean, it's kind of funny because Fritz is really good, but he plays in very conventional patterns, I think. And it just looks simple and easy, maybe. And that just keeps it from being as exciting as maybe Fonseca's game is. Yeah, so I just expect that to be very close. I wouldn't really guess. If you made me guess, I wouldn't guess who's going to win that. I just, I'd tune in. Brooksby, Griekspoor. Brooksby's presenting a problem for projections because he just keeps getting set as an underdog and then winning anyway. The kid just knows how to grind. He's very good at finding almost shots. You put him in a bad situation, and instead of going big, he goes a little bit big. You send him off the court, and instead of going down the line for the winner, he goes down the line for something frustrating. He's in a big moment on a big point, and he'll serve volley and hit a two-handed backhand volley that, you get to, but he puts away the next ball. He's just really good at extending rallies. He's really patient. He makes it obvious that he wants to grind all day. And, that forces his opponents to come up with shots, which they can't always. Grass helps your offense, but Brooksby is a problem. Yeah, Griekspoor had a good week. I think he's still alive in the tournament at this point. Just beat Moutet, who was a little bit flat today after the Mickelson grind. He beat Felix. He beat Diallo. That was the match I watched, and he really played efficiently there. I like Griekspoor's game. He's comfortable being from the Netherlands, comfortable on grass. This is going to be a close one. I actually like Griekspoor's side here, even though Brooksby's playing really well. I think Griekspoor serves a little bit bigger. I think he has a little bit more ability to generate pace off a sitter, basically. When he has control, I think it'll be a little easier to score. So it's really just about defense and focus for him, which are things he tends to have in the majors. He's played a lot of 5-set matches. That's where I think this is going. Brooksby's serve is underrated. His forehand's good. It's not really a hole in his game. He looks good after the suspension. He got suspended for testing positive for some or other steroid, which is fortunate, unfortunate. I don't know. A lot of people are using some stuff. What degree of stuff, how often they're using it. That's debatable. But getting suspended for that is unfortunate, but it's a lot easier to come back from a layoff that was based off no injury than, the injury layoffs most of these guys are coming back from. So Brooksby, before the suspension, was playing at a really promising level. So probably get back there. You could see a big U.S. Open from him. Honestly, he really thrives in those hot conditions where stamina becomes an issue. Lehechka should straight set Delian. Delian's really good server, good forehand, but Clay is where he's best. I don't expect him to put up much fight there, and Lehechka's hitting the ball really hard right now. Bellucci, Crawford, couldn't tell you honestly. Feel like I'm almost to the end here. Yeah, I am. Yeah, Crawford's a good player. Good serve, good forehand. It's like the British people stole the American stereotype. It's kind of working for them. Bellucci's not really been doing great on grass. Crawford, I think, has been. 3 sets with Quinn. It's not bad. Lost to Mochizuki's not bad. There's one good win in here somewhere, I know. He beat Holt. Holt's a good win. The level's not really there yet to beat Bellucci, but should have quit himself well. Probably Bellucci in 4. Nori RBA. I hope they enjoy playing for 6 hours. Just a really classic matchup there. I won't have anything too good there. Nori has won every time. And if he's won in the past, decent. Well, Clay, we can get rid of that. 2021 is too far back. I think Nori is struggling to find form here, but I don't know. If you've beaten a guy in the past, like RBA, it feels like you're able to grind more than him. And, he's not getting younger. He had a long week last week. RBA is playing his best on grass right now, so very even one there. I hope RBA wins, simply because Nori does some frustrating things on court, He does the fist pump at the other person, which always, tennis players are varying degrees of soft, but I don't think they really are that confrontational or want to be, I think if you remove the net, people would still stay on their side. He does the let's go in the other person's language when he can, harmless. A lot of people say vamos, a lot of people say ale, but seems poignant when he does it. I think he tagged Jookovic with an overhand. Harmless again, but things start to add together. And you would, I would, not that I'm a great person, and I'm not a piece of shit, but, edit that out. But yeah, you would think if you were starting to get a reputation for things, you'd mind that. You'd make a show of not doing those things or changing things, or even someone like Swiatek, who was having that issue where she was waving her arms when the other person was going for a shot. Big scramble moments. She would, smack the racket on the ground. She hasn't done that as much. You know what I mean? She's been taking her losses and working on it. That counts. People who throw tantrums, even like Holger Rune, still occasionally throws a tantrum, but you can see that he's put a lot of work into trying to be positive on the court and trying not to be a little shit. And sure, you still have little shit moments, but I mean, everyone does. If you put a camera on me all day, by the end of some days, you're going to be like, wow, that guy is a little shit. So, yeah, I think RBA is better in the conditions. I think he's playing better, but it's hard to overlook that head-to-head. And, Nori will have an edge on stamina after a long week last week for RBA. I don't know who's going to win. Do you? Put it in the comments. Like and subscribe. I don't do that. Moeller, great clay court player, got on tour. I think it's his first main draw where he didn't have to qualify. That's a great sign for him. He will be good on hard court. He has a great first serve. I don't think it'll matter too much here. Tiafoe's going to play better at a major. He's going to serve better. I think he wins. Moeller's not going to put him down, but he's better on slow courts right now. Really promising player, but just not really there defensively, I think, on grass yet. It would be surprising. Tiafoe's another guy who here could really blast through the draw if he plays well, because he just has the game for the surface. He has a big serve, great spins, some of the best athleticism on tour, and some of the best shot making too. He really has good hands at net. Jair's been playing a little bit better on grass lately. Serves well, hits hard. Rublev has beaten him in every single one of their meetings, though, and should win here. Just really a more aggressive baseline game with similar serving and power abilities, really, here. I think Jair's problem in beating the top guys on tour has always been just a less aggressive shot selection. Even though he can hit hard, even though he has the stamina, we've seen some great results from him. He almost beat Jookovic once, but I think it was the Australian Open. But just hard to win when you're not getting cheap points, and Rublev will. Bergs Harris is a good one. Bergs is always looking to grind people down. He's very energetic. I think he ran into somebody at the net earlier this year or something like that. Or somebody ran into him. Couldn't tell you. But Harris beat him in 2021. I don't think it'll happen here. Harris retired from his last match. He's been off tour. He's been losing and winning at the challenger level. Bergs is on a skid here, you could say. But look at the guys he's on a skid against. Khachanov, Diallo, even Fonseca, is just at another level. And he did have a great result. He won the title in Hertogenbosch. So, his ability to grind and his consistency is going to be a factor there. Harris, if you don't know him, big forehand, great movement, tremendous athlete, good serve. Backhand is pretty weak at times, so Bergs will have a target. And when he has a target, he tends to lock in. I like Bergs there in 4 or 5. Mannarino O'Connell. O'Connell hasn't been that good on grass. The one-hand backhand against a lefty is never a good equation, and Mannarino's really good on grass. He makes the ball slide. He gives you nothing to work with, and his wide serve is extremely annoying on grass. Mannarino in 3 makes sense to me. Royer is good. Did qualify. I mean, you can hear in the tone that I don't think he's going to win this. Tsitsipas is always vulnerable. He does not have a good backhand. Everyone knows this. He does not have the best attitude. He seems, mildly invested in trying to be tenacious. And I just don't really see him as that kind of guy. He seems like the guy who wants to have fun. And it feels like sometimes there's influences on him to be different, like the kind of kid who you find hugging a tree and someone's like, no, you chop down the tree. And I know that doesn't make any sense, but there you have it. I think Tsitsipas serves as well as Royer. I think he hits the ball bigger, moves a little better. It's the match where Royer can win sets. He could even win the match, but it would require him to lock in and play his best tennis. He's a very offensive player. He'd have to play it for the whole match. I don't think he'll do it. It's a big ask. And Tsitsipas still gets to serve. These guys are, they're vulnerable. Oh, you can target his backhand, but you have to do it so often. And his backhand's going to hit the court a lot of the time. He's going to run around it. And, the physical toll that it takes to beat him at 3 out of 5 is tough. He still gets to serve. He still can play well, too. This is assuming, right? So when I look at the upset, I kind of need to remember that Tsitsipas doesn't have to play poorly. He can play well. He can serve well. And basically his entire game is built around his first serve. When he's landing first serves, he's a top 10 player. The rest of the time he's in that 30 to 40 range really, because he just, he has some mental issues on the backhand side. He hits some shanks, but even when I say 30 to 40, it feels wrong. It feels like he's still top 20. So I like him here I think it'll take at least 4 sets. Royer is a good server. It is grass. He did qualify. And Tsitsipas is, he's a special little guy. Felix playing well on grass again. If he serves well, he beats Duckworth. Duckworth is a grass court terror, I guess, is a nice way to say it. I put quotes up. I guess you didn't see that. But, yeah, maybe the next one of these I should get some, nature footage or something for people to look at instead of just the screen the whole time. An hour and 26 minutes. Yeesh. I wouldn't even listen to me for that long. Yeah, so Felix should win that in 3 or 4. He is a bit careless, I guess you could say, when he works it out in the early rounds, so could get close. Struff just really can't win a match. I don't really think Mizolic is great on grass, but he qualified. It's a very winnable draw there for him. But, you look at a lot of green right there. None of these wins are technically as strong as Struff, but all of those guys are playing sharper than Struff. Struff is just losing matches. He's rushing the net almost constantly. He's missing shots. He's hyper aggressive. It's his game, but I don't think he's thinking out there. I think he's just trying to do what worked before, and not really paying attention to conditions or how the tour has shifted. The tour has gotten a lot better defensively. There's a lot more depth. Little mistakes cost you sets now. They used to be given back. There used to be a lot of hyper-aggressive players, and now there's a lot of guys who are just very, very solid at hitting passes. There's, very few guys with just one wing. Yeah, it's a serving battle here. Mizolic has a lot of power, good serve, but he's a clay court guy, so if Struff can serve well, he should be able to hold at a good clip. Yeah, I'm going to try to keep this under an hour 40, so I'm going to hurry up. I do like Mizolic there in maybe 4 sets. Struff should win, obviously. Struff should win. He has a big serve, huge forehand. He loves to come to net. It's the perfect situation for him. He's playing a qualifier. He's playing a guy who's not the best on grass. And yet, it's hard to say he's going to win a match because he just hasn't made the decisions yet this year that show that he really, really wants to. He's willing to play hyper-aggressive and lose. Tarve. Really, really, really good play. I actually don't know a lot about him, but, he beat Block X. Pronouncing that wrong. It's probably Block. Bloch? I'm going to get sued. Yeah, he played really well in qualifying. I really liked everything I saw from him. He served well. He hit his forehand well. He hit his backhand well. He moved well. He played aggressively. Just zero wrong. And Rieti is back, consummate qualifier, I guess you could call him. He's constantly playing well. He's a good server, great offense. He's really one of those guys who I thought would be on tour already, but there's been a lot of fitness issues, a lot of injuries, a lot of time off, a lot of close matches. I do think that's been one of his issues, is that he's constantly digging out of first set deficits. So this is a really tough spot. And the other guy has no scar tissue, basically. No worries, no problems. He's playing at home. It's a tough spot. It's a tough spot for both. Both will really like their chances. I think I like Tarve. He's just been winning longer. And even though Rieti is a better player as far as ceiling, I don't think he's at that ceiling yet. And Tarve's, the one thing that really impressed me about him was his physicality in the qualifiers. He just, he took a break between sets, and I thought, maybe he's struggling, maybe he's trying to take a timeout, and he just came back and was incredible. Honestly, he closed out from there. So I like his side there. Maybe 5 sets. It could go either way there, but whatever. Sue me when it doesn't. Gotta get a lawyer, I think. Or maybe even an attorney. Ooh. No one's listening, right? Fonini in 5. No. Yeah, so Alcaraz is ridiculously good. I think he has one huge thing going for him now after the French Open, which is the solid fact that if you are not physically at your peak, you can't win. He's kind of locked into being the stamina king, which is a good transition for a guy who lost in a finals after having cramps and having to withdraw. Or did he withdraw? Couldn't tell you. Don't watch tennis. But yeah, it's a great transition, and I think that means a lot of players are going to go for broke against him. I think Nadal and Djokovic were big beneficiaries of this after they established that they were not guys you could outlast, because the other players start to force stuff. They start to play outside their game. They start to not play their best, and you start to get quick wins. And quick wins are huge in majors. Quick wins are there when you the tournament. When you get to the quarterfinals and you've been winning in straight sets, you just have that full gas tank. And if the other guy just came through 3 5-setters, you're going to win. You're just mentally more fresh. That mental freshness is huge. All these guys are in great shape. If you watch them, the warm-up before their matches is more than most people do in a workout period. They're in tremendous shape. The tennis version of tired is my version of peak, but that mental freshness is important. You need to be locked in. And I think Alcaraz has another thing in that department, which is that he plays hyper aggressive and he goes for whatever he wants. But when things do get bad, he has another level of focus. He can lock in, make fewer errors, grind you out, and it's what he usually does, which is also very good to see. It's good to see someone who doesn't get frustrated. It's good to see them have a plan B. And, the longer he stays on tour, the more he'll realize that plan B is probably better as a plan A, Fonini doesn't have a chance here. It's good to see him playing, but he's cooked. I mean, Alcaraz is the favorite here. He's playing great. He's wildly entertaining. The crowd loves him also. One of the things I thought was big at the French Open was that the crowd was behind Alcaraz. They're cheering for great tennis, right? But it wasn't just a we want to see more tennis thing as they were cheering for Alcaraz to win. Even after he was dominating, they still were roaring for him. He plays that style of tennis that's wildly entertaining for them. And that'll be something for Sinner to deal with in the future. He won't have a tough time with it here, I think. I think the British crowd is pretty neutral, fairly polite. Even for their own players, they don't really interfere. But it's something for Sinner to solve, which is how to get the crowd on his side. He had them a bit subdued, in Roland Garros, but once they get involved, they're having a good time. It's a crowd. That's what they want to do. They want to get involved. They want to cheer, and they want to see a great story. And Alcaraz has given them some great stories. So, let's see how he does this week. If you actually listen to all this, what do you think? Seriously, though, that's pretty cool. Or something. I don't know. What are people supposed to say at the end of this? Supposed to just, fucking end it or something?